Welcome back to our listeners. This is Fearless Journeys Thriving on Campus. My name is Corrine, and
I'm Steve Johnson. Today we're going to look at a topic that a lot of students struggle with. We're talking about financial stress and what are the impacts on our mental health. And we know finances are kind of that top concern for most of us, and the stress that they bring can really affect our mental health and our academic performance.
Mm-hmm. So remember to share this episode with your friends and subscribe.
Let's start looking at the big picture of what financial stress is and the reason that it's kind of a leading cause for post-secondary students. I mean, we're looking at tuition, books, we think about rent, groceries, kind of that all adds up. So what does that really look like for us?
So we have a guest with us here today, Alex. Thank you for joining us. Could you let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is Alex. I work at the Financial Aid and Student Awards desk here at the Polytechnic. I've been here for, it'll be my third summer coming up pretty soon. And yes, I've learned some things and hopefully I can help out a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And we know that we had some pre-conversation and you're quite used to the mic and quite creative. Mm-hmm. So it's good to have you here for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right. So we'll dive right in. Our first question for you, Alex. Can you explain how financial stress can impact a student's daily life and mental health?
Yeah. I find many students can experience just lack of sleep, general fatigue when it comes to financial stress. Some students will start eating a lot less just to kind of cope with the stress, cope with the financial stress, of course. Mm-hmm. Groceries are super expensive. I find students will tend to withdraw from their social circles because that stress of just not having that spending money can lead people to believe that they can't go places, they can't do things with their friends, even though, of course, you still can. Yeah, and of course, it also leads to time management, which can affect your academics quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We do see students who, are starting to miss classes and just all that whole impact of all the stresses, of course, not just financial, but financial stress being a big play of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Well, and all the things you mentioned too, those are signs and symptoms of mental health concerns, which can lead to more concerns, especially with that isolating piece.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really hard, I suppose, for students kind of to find that balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's really easy to lose yourself in the academics or the social aspect. If you're working while you're in school as well, it can be really easy to start skipping classes, to pick up a couple of shifts, and then you're missing out on your studies, and then you need to catch up. But of course, you're working to try to make the money that you don't have.
Yeah, quite the balance for sure.
Yeah.
We feel often that there's this sense of overwhelmness in the sense of, they have all this debt and they can't make ends meet, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe what are some common financial mistakes that you see students making that add to that stress?
The biggest one is eating out.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Spending money on fast food, takeout, like it could be ordering a pizza, even if you eat it one day and then have it for lunch the next day kind of thing. It still can be over $30 for it to be delivered to you. Yep. Buying a coffee every morning tends to add up and that kind of stuff. Eating off the value menu. It's just so much better to take the time and prepare food at home. That way your eating is just so much more rounded. You're getting a lot more value for your money, of course. And I find students will, on the opposite end, if you are just spending so much on money, a lot of students go on the opposite end and they don't spend anything on food, and they're skipping meals so that their groceries last longer. They're eating like a cup of noodles a day kind of thing. Yeah. And of course that will affect your mental health, of course. You're going to be fatigued. You're not going to feel great. You're going to start missing classes. And Yeah, it's just, it's definitely a vicious circle. And then I also find that subscriptions, a lot of students have, or myself included, there's just so many things that you can watch, you can listen to these days. And I find if you're not using it at least every other day, you probably don't need it. And you can opt out of that monthly subscription. And if you find a week has passed and you're like, oh, I haven't used that thing, actually, you're starting to save money. Because there's 50 different streaming platforms, and at most, maybe you need one.
Yeah. We have so many, and I think that does take tons of money that we don't even think about.
Right? Well, it just automatically, it comes out of your account. A lot of the time, you don't even notice it just coming off of your account. Sometimes you could get stuck with double subscriptions and that kind of stuff. So it's really important to keep track of all of that stuff. Yeah,
and that's a point too, right? Keeping track of expenses, and oftentimes we just don't think about tracking those things. I think a lot of times too, going back to your first point, there is a lot of money being spent on food delivery.
Yes.
And, there's stories out there who people are spending thousands of dollars yearly on these delivery, companies and such, right? But all that amount of money that is in a sense kind of wasted on that. That's probably why I don't buy Corrine coffee anymore, because it's just too expensive.
Yeah, probably. Even the delivery things are now subscribable.
Yeah.
So that can even be a thing as well, right?
Yeah. You subscribe, you pay a monthly fee, and you get free delivery. Yeah. But
you're still paying.
that.
And there's so much, the delivery is so much higher than if you went and got the food.
Oh, yeah. Because, there's the delivery fee, but then you tip your courier as well. But then the restaurant also has their service charges, because they have to pay.
They have to make the money to
and everything. They have to pay for that service. So it all just costs too much money.
It does. And we were talking earlier about, before this, we were talking about those scholarships and bursaries and grants. And students just sometimes aren't accessing those things. So that's a great thing that, students can do to help offset some of that financial stress.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All right. So our next question, how do you see financial stress manifesting with students? Are there any warning signs that students can be aware of in their own lives?
Yeah. If you're having trouble focusing on your homework, on your sort of just day-to-day tasks, you find your mind's always going back to that, oh man, those finances, the stress of finances in general. There's also, if you're starting to get a feeling of anxiety when money is brought up, even if it's just a general topic, we were thinking of going this place for lunch, and that they have $10 lunch specials, but it's like $10 is a lot of money. It can be a lot of money. So, you're avoiding social events, you're starting to skip out on going out with friends, because there's this assumption that to go places you need to spend money, but it's very easy to go places that aren't under a venue. I find in the summer, there's tons of little festivals and everything, even just going for the social aspect of it. You don't need to spend money to have fun. That's a really big one. I find another thing would be if you're just straight up ignoring your finances. You're not checking your bank account, you're ignoring your upcoming bills, and then, all these things start to add up. Skipping classes to start working extra shifts. And of course, there's the physical symptoms where you get the headaches, you get the nausea, you're under eating or you're overeating. You could start having sleep issues. And of course, that can also lead to substance abuse, which of course is also expensive.
It is, yes. It's just a cycle, right? Yes, for sure. You mentioned the social aspect of it, and we know that connections really boost your mental health.
Yes.
Right. So How do you see that then, playing out with, manifesting? Like you said, we tend to push away those social things, right? So do you see a lot of students doing that in interacting with you itself?
Yeah. We see students at the beginning of the semester when they're excited, a little nervous about everything. They're starting to get their finances in order. And then the next time we see them, you could just tell that they're stressed and they're overwhelmed at everything, the academics, but mostly the budgeting is something. It's, if you go in blind, you're not going to be prepared for just the general costs of education and everything. And I find these, like, some students, like, they come the beginning of the semester and they're, flushed rosy cheeks, and then towards the end of the semester you can see the dark circles. You can see that, their cheeks are a little, like, their cheekbones are showing a little bit, and it's like, dang, you like, what's going on? Like, how's it, like, how are you holding up? And it's like, I ran out of money. It's like, it happens
so often.
Yeah.
So often.
Now that we've talked about the scope of the problem, let's focus on the solution. Managing financial stress isn't just about having more money. It's about managing what you have and addressing the mental toll. So what are first steps that students can take to gain control of their finances?
Yeah. The first thing would be planning before you're going to be attending school. You need to be proactive. You have to look at the costs of the education. You need to look at the costs of the institution itself, because when students go to school, they think, okay, well, tuition and books, but there's also living expenses, travel expenses, and all that kind of stuff that need to be considered too. One thing is living below your means.
Right.
Being frugal doesn't mean you need to wear the paper bag kind of thing, but you need to just be very aware of your spending while you're in school, and it just makes that transition into the full-time work life so much easier if while you're in school you develop these habits where you're spending less than you make, or you make more than you spend. And you got to ask yourself, do I need this? Or do I want this?
Right, like mentioning the subscriptions that you mentioned, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Tracking your expenses right down to the penny is something that is, you know exactly what's coming in, what's going out. You're able to prepare for unexpected expenses. If all of a sudden your vehicle needs an oil change, you have that little bit of room to be able to spend money on an oil change and maybe get like a new filter and that kind of stuff. And I find one thing is round your expenses up, but round your income down.
Right.
Yeah, because if you are just rounding everything up, you're not actually bringing in that much money. But if you're rounding it down, there's that little bit more that is just that wiggle room, because, banks have fees and all that kind of stuff.
You get some cushion there for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Corrine, we often see students coming into the Polytechnic here who haven't necessarily learned those life skills, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. So, talking about that planning and budgeting, there are definitely apps and tools out there. How effective do you think these are for students, or do you have any favorites?
Well, budgeting, a lot of them cost money.
Right.
There's just monthly subscriptions to almost everything, but I find just online we talk about money mentors a lot.
Okay, yeah.
They're free consultation, like free trial and everything. They have calculators and budget tools that you're able to access. A lot of banking apps also will give you a general rundown of what you're spending on food, travel, and then like non-essentials.
Right.
So a lot of banking apps have these budgeting tools in them. And of course, consultations with actual like bank officer are free. You could talk to them, you can talk about what would be, as a student, what's better savings, what's a better account to use for checkings and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Corrine, have you found any yourself that might work? I don't budget myself, which is a terrible thing to say here, right? But,
I know, let's cut that part out.
Yeah.
Same. I know my bank app does have it, but like in my family, we have a lot of accounts, so it doesn't fully capture things.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I know that is a tool that we can use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is shocking, actually, when you're looking at your bank statements and it's saying you spent $1,000 on eating out. It's like, what?
It really doesn't seem like that much when you're, $3 here, $4 there kind of thing. And but you got to add it. You got to add it all up. So keeping your receipts is a really good thing to do, even if it's a couple of dollars at the gas station, that kind of thing. Ask for your receipt, track that money. If you don't know where your money is going, that's your first step. And an important thing to understand is, I guess, the anxiety and the embarrassment that comes with not having that control over your funding. Everybody has felt it.
Right.
Everybody has felt it at some point in their life, unless, of course, you're a millionaire or something like that. But unfortunately, they can even feel the pain of taxes and all that kind of stuff.
And it's that stress, obviously, that's leading to these mental health problems.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that leads us nicely into our next question. Many students hesitate to talk about money, especially when they're struggling. How can we encourage open conversation about finances among peers and even family?
Yeah. That underlining, I guess, guilt and just the weird shame that comes with speaking out about financial struggles. It can be really easy to judge somebody for their spending habits, but hearing that you have a spending habit can be kind of devastating. People get, myself included, I get very defensive when people are like, hey, should you really be spending money on that? And it's like, well, it's my money. I can spend it on what I want kind of thing. But it's that defensiveness, that anxiety, if that's what is coming up when people are asking you about finances, then you might need to take a moment and really think about where your money is going and everything like that. And it's really important to be open and honest about what you're struggling with, because of course financial struggles lead into mental health struggles very easily, and it could be a very fast drop as well. Yeah, there's so many people, often those closest to you, that are struggling with the exact same thing. So if you find that you need to speak with someone, whether it's your parents or your peers, if you wait for just a calm moment, bring it up. If you're a little nervous, start with that. We listen and we don't judge. I'm having trouble and I need to talk to somebody kind of thing. And, bringing up your savings goals can be an easy way to get into the topic because it's exciting. You're saving if you want to travel, if you want to buy an instrument, that kind of stuff. It could just be a lot easier to be like, hey, I really want this drum set, but I don't know how to save for it. Can you help me?
Right.
And, people are like, oh, yeah, drum set, that's awesome kind of thing. Not knowing that you're unfortunately struggling in other aspects, but you're saving for this drum set and they're excited for you.
Right.
Kind of thing. Asking for general advice, just bringing that general relaxed conversation in, amongst your peers, be like, hey, do you have a grocery budget? What do you spend on groceries a month? I find I'm going to this place and it's getting a little expensive. Where do you go? Kind of thing. A lot of grocery stores have that first Tuesday of the month deal. Yes. Discounts all around town. Everything. All you need is a valid student ID and you can access lots of discounts. So that's really helpful.
Yeah, and I think our students sometimes just don't realize that they can get those discounts.
Oh, yeah. Sure. And all you have to do is ask. Be like, hey, do you have a student discount?
It's like normalizing the conversation, like you said. with any mental health issue,
that's
right?
what I was going to say. This is very in line with this whole entire podcast, talking about it. Let's talk about it to reduce that stigma, to reduce that shame and guilt. I just want to add to some grocery stores in town do have price matching. So if you take the time to look through and see if there's deals at other places, if your grocery store honors that, you can bring that there and get a little bit cheaper groceries as well.
There's, tons of ways to save dollars here and there. And of course, it all adds up.
I was thinking about this very same thing, a drum set. I should say for a drum set. So when, you were talking about interacting with your peers and such, what you're, in a sense, looking at is that support system that we have. Right? And it really can make a difference when we're talking about our stress, our financial stress. What resources do you find are available for students that they might not know about?
Yeah. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is when your institution's offering awards and scholarships. Of course, selection is not guaranteed. It is competitive, but a lot of students miss out simply because they think they don't qualify. With awards and scholarships, though, while there is a good amount that are based off of academic achievement, there's an equal amount that are based off of the financial need of the student.
Right.
And then you can, pair that with if you volunteer and that kind of stuff. There's definitely something for everybody, and they are open. Beginning of March every year is when they open. So that's always something to look into, as well as government loans and grants. If you're coming to Alberta out of province, you could still apply for funding through your home province.
Okay.
As long as the program is covered. So, for example, Quebec doesn't cover the criminal justice if you're taking it outside of Quebec.
Right.
So stuff like that. But it makes sense. Why come to Alberta when you could just do it in your home province kind of thing. And of course, when it comes to those loans, people are like, ooh, loans, the Canada, the federal portion, they no longer charge interest. Alberta still does, but it is significantly lower than if you take out a personal line of credit. As well, when you're ready to start repaying those loans, there's the repayment assistance plan.
Okay.
It's based off of what your income is. So if you are part of that lower income, the payments are adjusted. So you're not breaking the bank just so you can pay these loans back. So it is something to consider. It is manageable. There's also resources. Just if you walk around the campus, there's a lot of little brochure sort of triages where you can find pamphlets on where to get different resources. We have little food pantries and everything. I believe the LPSA they bring in a food bank every so often and all that kind of stuff. So that's something. And when it comes to the food bank, students are welcome there. You need to, of course, show that you are struggling financially, but you're welcome to go. That's what they're there for. They're there to help people in the community. And then, of course, we mentioned before the different businesses that have the student discounts. If you desperately want that pizza, Domino's does a discount for students and that kind of stuff, just to ask around, figure it out. And of course, one thing that resources available to students, you are automatically given health and dental. And that is very expensive. Dental especially is very expensive. So use those resources while you have access to them. Because once you're out of school, it gets even more expensive, unfortunately.
That's true.
Yeah.
We definitely have a lot of students come in and they don't realize that they have benefits.
Oh, yeah. You have to actively opt out of them. Everybody automatically has them.
So I'm thinking, the first support place that you're going to go is Student Awards.
Yeah.
Go talk to
and you don't need an appointment to come talk to us. You can just walk right up to the desk and say, hey, I'm having some trouble. I need some help. And
Alex, help me.
Yeah, we'll sit down with you and if you want, we'll go over your expenses. We'll help kind of work out a budget and let you know what the different resources around town are.
Do you know in Lethbridge Polytechnic here, do we have workshops and such?
Yeah, there are. Every now and then, I do see a lot of the pamphlets. I know the Health and Wellness Center does little sort of workshops. Quite often they have financial ones. We don't hold as many, but we will sit in on any that are offered around campus. And then I know during tax season, there's free tax clinic
and
awesome. Everything to figure out your taxes and make sure you're on top of that too.
Of course, your tuition can offset your taxes, which is a good thing. So.
Yeah. One thing to remember, I actually had I had this question yesterday. If you're looking for your T2202, it's in your self-service account. But if you're looking for a T4A, it's most likely in the National Student Loan Service Center account.
Wow. Yeah. See, all these things that we don't know. Yeah, that's great, for sure.
Yeah. All right, so we know financial aid is a lifeline for many students. What advice do you have for students navigating scholarships, bursaries, and loans?
Yeah, for, the scholarships and awards, if you think you might not be qualified, apply anyways. You never know. There's some awards, there's just, they have these weirdly specific things, and then it turns out nobody who applied. So they go with the next person kind of thing. So definitely recommend applying. And then all students who apply for provincial or federal loans are automatically assessed for the grant portion. And of course, that's money you don't have to pay back at the end of your schooling as long as you're making progress. You don't withdraw during the semester, anything like that. And it's based off of what your income is. So the lower your income, the more grants you receive. And if you're unsure of where to start, I find, and when people come and ask us questions, I do this all the time. If they're like, hey, I'm from this place, I'm wondering what I can apply for, I just Google the province, student aid, or scholarships and awards kind of thing. And, the first couple of things that pop up are actually going to be quite helpful. We get a lot of students from Ontario, from BC, and all those kind of places. And there's things that are available for these students as well.
I was just looking on the website, on Lethbridge Polytech website, financial aid, and they, send you, there's a list on there. You can look at all the external scholarships that are on there. I found one from United Nurses of Alberta, which is great. I mean, because my background's nursing, if my son wants to go to, Polytech later on, he can apply for that. So there's a lot of different things in there. And it's really simple. The recommendations or the requirements are sometimes very simple for that. Oh yeah. There's
if you're interested in a field that is definitely sort of struggling to find people, if you look, there's going to be incentives for you to do this program. There's going to be awards. So one thing for nursing, once you're done your schooling, if you work in a remote community for a certain number of years, your loans can be forgiven altogether. Yeah. So that's always something to consider. These places are in desperate need of medical professionals, and you don't have to pay off your student loans kind of thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. What happened when I was doing it, huh?
Right? Yeah.
I missed that.
I think about that kind of stuff. Yeah. If I knew all this when I was in school, I'm sure I would have been a lot easier.
Yes, exactly. So we mentioned all these things, which is great. And of course, we're talking finances, but we're also talking, of course, that it does affect a person's health, their mental health. And accessing all these financial resources are awesome, but you can also access counseling resources. So I think, we always invite students to come down to Wellness Services and access some of that mental health help that they may need. Definitely. So Alex, what are 3 practical takeaways students can implement right away to ease some of that financial stress?
First one, stop ordering out. Stop the ordering, minimize your subscriptions. Anywhere you can sort of, prepare food at home, maybe instead of paying for 5 different streaming services, you just do one instead, that kind of stuff. Take advantage of the discounts that are around town and those kinds of resources. If you find, thrift stores are amazing.
Right.
Oh gosh, are they ever? The clothing, a lot of the time, if it has a tiny hole in it, you could sew it up. And you're getting it for a fraction of what you would pay at the regular store. because it's not all used.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is quote unquote damaged, where there might be a seam that's a little wonky and stuff like that, where you can purchase these real actual brand name clothing at a discount at these thrift stores. Same with furniture, appliances, that kind of stuff. There's no reason for students to buy new.
Right.
If you're struggling with money, you don't need a new ottoman. You probably don't need that TV stand.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
Or that 60-inch TV.
Yeah,
right.
60-inch TV. And then, so one thing when it comes to paying off debts would be, it's the snowball method. So let's say you have 4 debts. You start with the smallest one, so you're paying the minimum on all of them. But you start with the very smallest one and you double that payment. And you start paying that off, and once it's gone, you take what you were paying on that and you add it to the minimum of the next one.
Right.
And the next one and the next one. So by the time you're on your final debt, you have this massive amount that you're paying onto it that was already budgeted into this debt payment that now that biggest debt is going down even faster than all the other ones do. And then when you're out of it, it's like, oh, I have this money that I was spending on this debt, throw it in savings.
That's great advice. Just even cutting back, like you said, some of those subscriptions, looking at your budgeting, your finances, finding ways to cut back and having that money and actually, maybe saving that, some of it, right?
Oh, yeah.
If your debt isn't necessarily that high, we could actually take a piece of that and save it.
Yep, absolutely.
Have that emergency funding, I like to call it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are steps students can take now to set themselves up for long-term financial wellness. Alex, what advice would you give a student who wants to build a healthier financial future?
Yeah. One thing would be proactive. Start planning as soon as possible. The more you save for your schooling, the easier it's going to be to focus on those academics and that kind of stuff. While student loans are able to cover the education, they're not something you should rely on for living expenses.
Right.
A lot of the time, it's just not quite enough. So if you're prepared going in, it's just so much easier. Living below your means will help you save that money. It'll help you with, if you're having emergencies, paying for a new set of tires, that kind of stuff. And I find if you are able to balance your academics with work, it's nice to work a part-time job.
Right.
It's a little bit of spending money. It's a little bit extra in your savings. And it can really help out with that social aspect that you have to start taking a step back from when you do your academics. You got to kind of focus in on those. Yeah.
It's interesting that when we're thinking about job searching too, we know that sometimes it's tough out there. But, sometimes there's things that we've done as kids, like shoveling snow or raking leaves that we don't even think about. And actually, you can make a pretty good penny doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Snow removal is very big.
Yeah. And all these things are great. Another point might be, that delayed gratification. Right. And sometimes we don't think about that. Like, yes, I want to buy that TV, but maybe I will wait until I'm done school.
Oh, yeah.
Things of that nature.
I find one thing, especially if you struggle with impulse purchases.
Yes.
If you see something and you desperately want it, if you still want it the next day, if you still want it the day after that, and then the day after that, consider getting it.
Right.
You should treat yourself every now and then. It can be pretty hard to live frugally and you're not doing anything. It is important to treat, but don't splurge.
Yeah.
But if you find, I desperately want this, the next day, most likely you forgot about it. And then that's the money saved.
Yeah.
So part of that, like delayed gratification, we think about those future expenses and sometimes we're overwhelmed with that, with tight, our finances being so tight. So thinking about saving then for those big goals like emergencies, travel, paying off those debts, what would you recommend?
Yeah. So one thing is the pay yourself first
Okay.
method. So if you're working, each time you get paid, put a little bit into your savings. You can have it set up as an automatic deposit. It'll pull directly out of your checkings and plop it into your savings once a month. And if you're doing it right when you get paid, it's that much easier to see, okay, that money is out of my main account. I can't touch it. It's not part of my main spending. I find one thing I used to do when I was really struggling to not impulse spend all the time is I would take out a certain amount of money a month, and that was my spending. I wasn't able to take my debit. I couldn't use my debit for anything. If I didn't have enough cash, I couldn't get it.
Wow.
Yeah. Remembering to be patient. Saving can take a lot of time, especially, you're a student. It's hard. If you find that you are dipping into what you are putting away, you're going to need to reevaluate your expenses, see what you're spending your money on. If you've done this budget, everything seems to be in order, but there's still money being siphoned out. Take the time, go through every single thing that you spend money on and really figure out where it's going. But yeah, and another thing would be if you are taking out student loans, if you're taking out grants, if you put some of that aside for emergencies or for when you're ready to start repayment, you already have a good chunk that you could start using to make these payments. And then once you run out of that, you start paying with the money you're making instead.
I like what you said about your income going right into your savings. So you're basically automating your savings.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Because we automate our subscriptions and such, and it just comes out of our banks. It comes out of our credit card, and we don't see it. But if we do the opposite and save our money that way, I think that's a great plan.
Treat it. Yeah, you could treat it just like another bill. Yep.
Pay yourself first. I like that.
So our next thing, one thing we hear a lot is that students think they'll figure it out after they graduate. What would you say to students who are delaying financial planning, and why is starting early so important?
I find the longer you wait, the harder it gets. If you're planning on, applying for funding, you got to do that at least 45 days before you actually start. And then when you are finished, you need to start considering that those payments are coming up within 6 or 12 months. So if you start planning for when you're out of school, it's just so much easier. If you have an established budget and you find yourself with these expenses, it's just the stress of having these emergencies is significantly less if you already have been thinking about it. You already have a plan. Even if the funding is not quite in place, you have a plan. You know where you're going to be.
We almost need to have a planning workshop or a budget workshop for students to take prior to actually coming into the Polytechnic, right? Yeah, maybe that's something, Corrine, you could do. What do you think? No, maybe not.
I don't think it's my expertise.
And it's great to hear all this, too, because we see so much how all these financial stresses make a big impact on our mental health.
Oh, yeah.
And so we do, as students, there's a lot of suffering, a lot of emotional taxing, and a lot of it can be due to the financials.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Alex, for coming and joining us. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, if you need help, don't be afraid to ask. The institution, we're here to help. That's quite literally what we get paid for.
Yeah.
So it's, don't be embarrassed. Don't feel guilty. Yeah. Just come talk to somebody if you need us.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Talk to somebody. If they don't know, they can get you connected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To our audience, remember, it's never too early or too late to take control of your financial health. So even some of these small steps we talked about today can lead to some of these big changes we have tomorrow.
Yeah.
For sure.
We hope you'll take some of these strategies and apply them to your own journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Fearless Journeys Thriving on Campus, share it with your friends, and don't forget to leave a review. It really helps us grow and reach more students.
Your financial journey might feel tough now, but every small step you take today builds a stronger, brighter future. So stay focused, stay fearless, and keep thriving. Your goals are closer than you think.